Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hey guys, I am so excited to introduce today Chris Mille. He is an accounting and finance recruiter. Chris is the managing director of National Accounting Search, a recruitment firm dedicated to finding accounting and finance professionals for permanent roles. He brings to the table over 15 years of recruiting experience that spans accounting, finance, healthcare, and IT. Although his target industries have changed, his primary focus has not. He remains absolutely dedicated to facilitating a quality match that's a win-win for all parties. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Or joining me, I should say. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me on today, Virginia.
So, you are the first. I've talked with other recruiters, but you are the first one in the finance and accounting space. So, I'm so excited to get your take. Can you just provide me a quick overview of what you do and how you came to be in this role?
Absolutely. So I'm an executive recruiter in the accounting and finance space, and basically, companies and finance leaders come to me when they're having a hard time finding the right people through normal channels, or if there's a massive sense of urgency, like someone retires all of a sudden, or a project comes up and gets dropped in their lap. So that's typically when a company is going to call me. So in terms of my sweet spot, per se, it's going to be degreed accounting and finance professional recruitment, typically a senior accountant all the way up to CFO.
Okay.
And, also do some work in more of the project or interim type solutions. Say, for instance, when a vacancy is open and they're not quite sure which route they want to go, they bring someone in for the near term just to provide a stopgap.
Okay. So that includes like FP&A folks, sort of everyone in the middle between the accountant, senior level accountants all the way up to CFOs?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then, it's a funny story. So, as far as, how I got into recruitment, it's probably somewhat similar to what most people say. And it's sort of a jagged, way to get there. And it started off in healthcare recruitment back, about 15 years ago, recruiting nurses and healthcare professionals to provide in-home care. I really enjoyed that because I could, see the positive impact I was making on people's lives, bringing kids home from hospitals or, whatnot. And I really enjoyed that, but got to a point when I felt it was, time for a change. And, I really liked the idea of finance and accounting. So I transitioned over to that and actually came to a national accounting search. I was, attracted to the fact that they really focused heavily on quality versus quantity, and allowed me to continue my core belief and really message and do what I can to, provide that value to people.
Oh, I don't think I realized that you did home health. I was a home health social worker for a while.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I did case management, and I also did a little HR, but that was very close to my heart as well.
Yeah, it's always great, for instance, bringing a kid home from the NICU and having that, child get, better and be able to, continue on and grow and, just, enjoy childhood. So it's really rewarding. Yeah,
no, absolutely. So you see, right now, senior level professionals, but is your experience, do you recruit across industries?
Yes.
Okay. What do you see as sort of a couple of major challenges facing the candidates you're seeing, people that are, testing the job search waters or making a career change for, it might be the first time in a while?
Yeah, of course. So I think there's a couple really big ones out there. One of the first ones is just there's a ton of information out there in terms of the job search process, what to do, what not to do. And there's a lot of great information out there, but it can in part be overwhelming and frankly, sometimes a little misleading. So I think it's important that, candidates, really make sure that they're focusing on the basics when it comes to that. And talking with people and sort of triangulating information to make sure that they're going about it the right way. Talking with resume experts like yourself, or talking with recruiters, or talking with friends in the industry, things like that, just to get a sense of what's what. And then really the second part is going to be more of the talent acquisition process and ATSs, applicant tracking systems, because I'll give you a perfect example. I recently placed a candidate, and I like to take them out to lunch, sort of as a celebratory type of scenario. And I asked her how she came to her current job at the time, and it's a premier employer here in the Cleveland area. And she said she applied 3 separate times to very similar positions and didn't get anywhere, and decided to reach out to someone in HR, emailed over a resume, had an interview the next day, and was hired within a week. So
bypass the online.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that's always the route to go, but I think that the talent acquisition landscape is so complex that you need to, as a candidate, need to make sure that you're going a variety of different routes to be successful and get to where you want to go.
No, I agree. And your point about how much information is out there and how overwhelming and sometimes it's inaccurate. There was just a discussion today by my colleague Austin Belchak that talked about just that, and it sounds like we're on the same page. That people, to me, we need to treat our job search as consumers. The same way you review a product on Amazon, looking at pros and cons, and you just need to get a lot of opinions before making decisions. So triangulating the right info, gathering info, bouncing it up against people that you trust, and verifying who the sources are. That can help you to collate, a lot, or curate a lot of the information and figure out where to go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's face it, the job search process can be somewhat challenging, and there's negative or down points, and the positive sides. And I think it's just important to stay consistent and take information for what it is, and don't necessarily up and change your entire process just because of
one thing. Yeah,
out there. So
yeah, no, I agree. So, and maybe you just answered it. Is there something that you find that your clients are just totally shocked by as they're going through this? Is it the application process, or is it something else? Something that really catches them off guard?
Yeah, of course. So sort of twofold. So my clients technically are the companies that.
Well, that's true. You're right.
Find the people. So I mean, I can spend a brief minute on that,
Please.
And then really go into the bulk more so as far as what I when I'm talking with candidates, what surprises them, because I think that's a lot more applicable today. So from a company standpoint, I think that hiring managers are sometimes surprised at just how quickly the process needs to move to be successful. I'll give you a quick example. I had an individual I was working with, who's a senior finance professional, probably about 10 years of experience, was laid off due to a downsizing, and within 3 weeks had 3 separate job offers. And it was so very quick that 5 years ago you wouldn't have seen that happen.
Right.
And one of the companies just waited too long, and the process dragged out, and they lost. So that's one key point. And another one too is really compensation is important. Don't get me wrong, but there's other perks that come into play too. Flexibility, being able to work remotely, career planning, other various benefits. I even saw an article about providing daycare at a work site. I mean, all these different things can be potential talent attractors that companies need to consider and evaluate. So those are some things that really surprise more of the companies that I work with. But from a candidate perspective, I'm very adamant on focusing on the basics and, really making sure to not, get away from those, because again, it can become complex. So things that I, talk to candidates about as we're going through the process, even up for an interview, let's talk about a 30-second commercial that you can put together that's relevant to the person that you're talking with. That's only 30 seconds that you can really lay the groundwork.
That soundbite elevator speech kind of thing?
Yeah. and talking about something that's going to be relevant to that person that you're sitting across the table from, and really you frame the entire conversation from there. So that person's hearing multiple qualities multiple times throughout the interview process or throughout that interview, and knowing that you're the right fit. Now, things like, when you're preparing for an interview, think about examples from past jobs, almost behavioral-based examples.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, especially if you've been in a company for 10 years, you forget about other stuff that you've done in past positions or past companies. So that having that information at the ready as you're going
at their fingertips. Yeah.
Exactly. It's going to be beneficial. Thinking about questions that you're going to ask at the end of the interview. I mean, nothing's worse than a candidate when they're asked, do you have any questions, and they don't have any questions. It's just you need to show that level of engagement and interest. And lastly, I see a lot of this, just something as simple as sending a thank you note in a timely fashion to demonstrate your interest and really go above and beyond, because unfortunately, I think thank you notes have sort of gone by the wayside.
Do you recommend, I was reading an article on this, what's your take on a formal thank you note versus an email, or maybe doing both? Because one can get there quickly and then you can follow up with a handwritten note.
So my thing with thank you notes, I think an email is the best route to go. And It should be short and concise and message something that you found interesting in the conversation to show that you're actively listening.
Yeah.
You can send a thank you note as well, but over mail, which works. But at the very least, you need to send an email, preferably within 24 hours, and send separate emails to each interviewer.
Okay, and so with panel interviews, because I see a lot of those, that you need to get everyone's card.
Yeah, do your best to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. With regards to the perks, or not the perks, the process needing to move along in order to not lose, the top talent. Is that so? I mean, you've been doing this, I imagine, before the recession as well. I imagine that's changed. I mean, companies did have the luxury of taking much more time, and job seekers sort of had to just take it or leave it. Do you feel like this is just the in demand is just a boon to job seekers because the economy is so good?
Yeah, it is. Here are my thoughts on that. I think that it's important that a company, no matter what the market's like, is that company has the same consistent process. Just because a company's in the driver's seat during a recession or a candidate's in the driver's seat during a boom, I don't think that those things should really change.
I agree.
He said, I mean, conditions are always going to change, but employer brand is always going to be there. So, just companies need to be conscious of that. And on the flip side of that, candidates need to be conscious of it. I mean, how many articles do you see on LinkedIn about candidates ghosting people?
Oh yeah, you see it both ways. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's, I mean, that stuff sticks, and people know people. Now, Cleveland's a relatively large city, but everyone knows everyone, especially in finance function or accounting function or IT function. And word gets around, so you need to manage.
Mind your be polite, mind your manners, send a thank you note, ask some good questions. You're right; those are the basics.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What do you place, or have you placed candidates who are trying to break into a new industry or into a new role? I'm curious to know what your advice is to them on how to make a change.
Yeah, of course. It's a great question, and it happens more often than you might think. And really, it's all about putting together a game plan. Figuring out, number one, why are you looking to make a move? Okay. What are your motivating factors? What are you looking to change about your current situation? and what have you done about your current situation with your current employer? Have you tried to take on new projects? Have you tried to transition to different groups? What have you done? Because that question is going to most likely come up with any sort of interview that you've got, and showing a demonstrated action to try and fix something is going to put you in a more positive light. So from there, think about long term, where you want to see yourself, 10, 15 years out. What do you want to be doing, and what's going to need to happen between now and then for you to be successful in that role in terms of skill acquisition, experience.
What do you need to close the gap? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And make sure you're gathering information about what you're looking to transition to. Go out to networking groups. You can go on like meetup.com and you can get various IT tech stack groups that will give you a sense of what the day-to-day looks like. Just get information and really figure out what makes sense. And then coming up with 2 or 3 targets. So it could be a position, it could be an industry, it could be type of company, whatever the case might be. You don't want to go too broad when you're going through the process, because you can dilute your message. So lastly, it's making sure that everything that you've got out there is consistent. So from a more granular point, let's say you've got a financial analyst that's looking to transition from say a healthcare industry to manufacturing industry. That might be somewhat of a tough jump depending on the type of company that they're looking to move to. So it's really figuring out what relevant experience do you have in your current position that can translate well to the new industry. And it's making sure you're messaging that. It's making sure that you've got the quantifiable information that demonstrates value. And big thing is making sure that it's accurate in terms of scale. And what I mean by that is, dollar amounts in healthcare may be a different measuring stick versus dollars in manufacturing. So making sure that the reader knows sort of what
show the scope.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Is it your sense that in your industry, with who you're, in terms of the companies that you're finding candidates for, is it an easy sell to say to show that this candidate's skills? Is it easy to sell that they can make an industry jump? Is that a harder sell or an easier sell than sort of showing how their skills are transferable to a new role? Or I guess does it just really depend on the role?
It depends on the company and the organization. There's some hiring is in large part, the hiring process is a risk mitigation function. And what I mean by that is, making sure that I make the best hire. And if there's not, hiring managers are trying to check as many boxes as possible to try and make sure that person is going to be able to do the role successfully.
Yeah.
And industry experience is usually a pretty big one. So I'll give you another example. I was working on a search for a higher level position, and just wasn't finding what I was looking for out of that company's specific industry. So I started thinking, okay, well, what can we do where there's going to be a high transaction environment, lots of different moving parts, and what industries represent.
You found some like industries.
Exactly, and transition that, and that helped the company, and it helped the candidate as well. Make that transition.
That's really good advice. And whatever the candidate can do to identify as part of their target industries that are similar, that is probably an easier way to pivot than to try to make a massive jump to what is seemingly a completely unrelated industry.
Exactly. And I've even had recommendations with making almost like a bridge industry.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's going from finance to manufacturing, that might not be the best long-term, or that might not be the easiest path. But if someone might be open to considering something that's got somewhat of a flavor of manufacturing that gives you more of that skill set potentially, transitioning into that industry and going that way. So it's just there's a lot of different various factors. There's no one clear answer on that.
No, you're right. And I'm thinking, because I've helped to write documents for people that were transitioning in or out between healthcare and financial services. They're both super regulated industries. So that commonality makes them, I would consider those bridge industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's a great.
But you do have to overcome the concern that you don't understand the ins and outs of my industry. So I do feel like it's up to the candidates to show the likenesses.
Yep.
So, and I don't know how much you are dealing with this as in your role, but do you have any advice for someone who has been banging down doors and it is just, things are not going well? Very different from the person who is just starting out their job search.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that number one is just to continue to stay positive. Write down things that are going well, and not necessarily focusing on the end outcome, but it's going to be having a good interview or having a good coffee meeting for networking, things like that. Focus
like sort of celebrate the small wins.
Yeah, exactly. Love the process, and sometimes it's just hard to do that when you're going through the weeds. So there's that, but ultimately it's taking a step back and saying, okay, what's working, what's not working, and seeking info from reliable sources. Talk with HR managers that might be in your network, or talk with hiring managers that are network. Go to networking groups. Volunteer. Just get out and have conversations with people and take that information and just make sure that you're evaluating it effectively. And then also too, one big thing when you're networking, it's all about bringing the value to the other person. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the message, and you need to make sure that you're targeting it that way. And then even automating certain aspects of your job search. For instance, if you're looking on Indeed, you can get job alerts from Indeed, or you can get job alerts from various company websites. Things that cut down on the time spent on some of the more administrative stuff and really focus on more of the stuff that's making an impact and working for you.
Right. Are you familiar, or do you recommend people use canned scripts or canned responses in Google? In Gmail, you can create some templated responses and you can customize it, but it does save quite a bit of time.
I haven't, I'm familiar, but I haven't really done much on that. So I can't give you the best answer on it.
No, I just was curious if you ever heard of that, but that's, there's lots of different add-ons now that you can do that. That way you're not having to recreate something over and over again. No, that's good advice.
And I think that having a general rule of thumb template is, or set of templates is a good thing to have, but you also need to make sure you're customizing it to your audience and making sure that the message is right.
No, I agree, because it needs to come off as authentic and personal, and if it's personalized, if it appears canned, it will be received that way.
Absolutely.
What advice can you share with someone? I get these people all the time who can go, they have a lot of different skills, they can go in a lot of different directions, or maybe you're getting this on the company side where they, they want a candidate that is a jack of all trades. How do you guide people on when they're trying to cast a very wide net?
So I recommend that they look out 10 to 15 years. I think you might be
back year.
Yeah. But look out 10 to 15 years and say, okay, what do I want to, where do I want to be, what do I want to be doing, and make sure that whatever directions you're going are going to give you the right set of skills and experience to be successful in that future endeavor. So, for instance, in finance, there's a lot of activity right now in the private equity area.
Right.
And private equity typically will not look at CFOs that don't have private equity experience. So if you want to get into private equity as a CFO, I'd suggest trying to get into a portfolio company as far as your next step, gain that experience and continue to progress in that. Or another example is just really getting the experience that's just going to make you successful. If it's being a hiring manager or getting experience working in a hiring management process, or I should say hiring process, to gain that experience. It's just, again, working out where you want to be 15 years from now and then working backwards. And then,
go ahead. Nope, you.
And then once you have that, just really putting down 2 or 3 targets and focus on those.
What about those people that they have a limit? They've got to land a job right away. The people that I tend to come across that they just want to land somewhere. So they say, okay, well, I can do FP&A work, or I can also do accounting work. I can also do this. They just want to go with wherever is going to get them there fastest. And so their inclination is, let me just show someone that I can do all these things, and then someone will be easy to place. What's your take on
that? Focus is important when it comes to job search, and being a jack of all trades, master of none, I think is how the saying goes. And you have to be conscious when you're out there messaging, what you want to do. The hiring managers want to make sure that you're going to be a good fit, short term and long term as well. And if someone's saying, I'm open to doing this, and then that may not necessarily send the right message and might have that hiring manager think you're open to, you're not a long-term fit. Yeah. So it's how you make sure you message that. And then, I can tell you, sometimes I'm talking with candidates and I ask, where do you want to be 5, 10, 15 years out? And it's, I don't know. And that's fine, but you need to at least have, some idea of direction, and that just as you go through your career, but you need at least to set out with some level of focus for your next 5, 10, 15 years out.
Okay. And I guess if you're in 15 years, you really want to do something completely different, you probably should not be upfront about that with your hiring manager. I would imagine you'd want to show something that shows a career trajectory that aligns with what they're looking for now.
Yeah, I mean that's out there. I think that's important. But in the same breath too, if if a hiring manager is talking with the candidate and they want to continue to progress in the current company and reach X title, I think that's important to message longer term, because a lot of the companies that I look or work with want people to have aspirations to grow and progress within the company. Yeah. They don't want those individuals that are going to be happy in the role for 15 years. Now, conversely, there might be others, other companies that want those role players, and that's perfectly fine. It's just making sure that candidate that they're interviewing is comfortable being in that role longer term.
Okay. All right. No, fair enough. Know your audience. Absolutely. All right. So this question, I talk about it a lot. I get a lot of questions about it. A lot of my clients are concerned about it. When you're dealing with senior level folks, the concern of age discrimination often comes up. I'm curious to know how those discussions go on your end, on the candidate side as well as on your client side.
Yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, it's out there. Discrimination in general. And my whole thought on it is diversity is extremely important, and having a diverse workforce and having a group of people with diverse thoughts, per se, and bringing different perspectives is really a true competitive advantage to that company. And companies that aren't really embracing that are going to have a challenge as we go forward in the economy. And that's just the reality of it. So, when it comes to, candidate perspectives and dealing with that, I always ask the candidates paint themselves in the best light possible. when it comes to resumes, when it comes to conversations. Talking about relevant experience that's in your background that's going to have you appear as attractive as possible and be able to be as successful as possible in those roles. And interviewing is not a confession, right? But you also need to make sure that you're sharing information that's going to, again, put you in the best light possible. So that's really the message that I get across. Don't hide anything. Just make sure that you're putting yourself in the best light possible.
Do you get the sense that certain industries, just with regards to the age issue, do you feel like certain industries discrimination is less of a concern, or does it really just depend company to company?
I would just say it's dependent company to company.
Mm-hmm.
And there's unfortunately real no rhyme or reason that I see.
Okay.
In my work.
No, that's fair. All right. So one of my favorite questions, someone comes up to you, have 30 seconds to answer them. What are one or two tools that a job seeker, career changer cannot be without during their journey? What do they need in their toolkit?
So I'm going to say access to networking groups and access to people that are good sounding boards for them.
Yeah.
Support system. Going through thick and thin and just being there to help. Having someone there to talk with. And again, going back to networking groups. There's a lot of jobs that are out there that aren't even advertised. So it's being out with people in the industry that you want to be in and just continuing to network and brand yourself there.
So true. My husband just landed last month, and he found out about 3 roles before the jobs were even posted. And the hiring app, through discussions and networking, they called and said, "Hey, it's posted. Apply right now."
Yep.
And you're right. That's the way it works. Well, thank you. So my last question before we wrap up, what is next for you? What's your 15-year plan?
That's a great question. It's really quite simple. It's just to continue to grow the firm and make sure that we're continuing to message the focus on quality and wanting to make sure we're helping companies and candidates alike.
If someone would like to reach out to you or to your firm, what is the best way for them to do that? On my site, I'm going to include your email and your LinkedIn. Is that what you recommend, or do you have any other places where they should go to learn or get in touch with you?
No, LinkedIn is great, and so is email, or it's an old-fashioned phone call.
Perfect. Well, Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Really good information. And it's so nice to hear how, your clients are not job seekers, but your advice really will benefit them.
Thank you very much for the time. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SCIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.